seat, and welcome to Sunday morning of Memorial Day weekend. We're really excited about this morning's service. If you guys would stand, take your hymnal, turn to 804. We're going to sing Battle Hymn of the Republic. 804, we'll sing the first, second, fourth, and fifth of Battle Hymn of the Republic. 804. 804 on the first. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the faithful lightning of his parables so sworn. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. I have seen him in the watchfires of 100 certain camps. They have builded him an altar in the evening dews and damps. I can read his righteous sentence by the day is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. Verse number 4. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with the glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us live to make men free, while God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. We can almost hear the trumpet sound. The Lord's return is near. There are still so many people lost. His message they must hear. Father, give us one more moment, one more day, just one more year. With God we're marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
Amen. Pastor is enjoying his vacation in Myrtle Beach this week. For those of you who don't know, so he is not here this morning, but we are praying that he has a good restful time away with his family, to be able to be recharged and refreshed moving into the next season, thinking of VBS and things like that coming up. It's a good time for him to get away. If you don't know the story, the hymn history of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, Julia Ward Howe, when she wrote this, was with her husband, and they were near an army infantry and were watching them move out, and they were singing all together in unison. And she was so moved by the soldiers singing that night that she could not fall asleep. And she penned the first 4 verses of this song in one night because she was so moved by the soldiers that she was watching them march. Just a cool story, cool history with Julia Ward Howe. We're so glad you're here with us this morning. Many people on vacation like Pastor, many people just enjoying some time off. We have many visitors here with us this morning, so grateful for the visitors that we do have. And I'm going to ask Brother Dwayne, if you just lift your voice there, open us up with a word of prayer this morning. Ask God to meet with us today.
Dear Father, we do thank you for this country. Lord, we do thank you for the freedoms that we have. Lord, just to assemble ourselves here together. Lord, thank you for those that have given the ultimate sacrifice of their life. Lord, I pray that you help us to utilize this freedom, Lord, to worship you here, lift you up. Lord, I pray that your will be accomplished in this service, that we would see the movement of the Holy Spirit. Lord, I pray that you would be with Pastor Lear, give him the words, give him the message. Lord, even prepare our hearts and minds to receive, to hear that message and apply it to our hearts. Lord, we ask that every aspect of the service will be honoring and glorifying to you. For it's in Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen.
As you guys take your hymnal one more time, turn to 807. My Country 'Tis of Thee, 807. We'll sing the first and the fourth of My Country 'Tis of Thee. 807 on the first.
not received one of this morning's bulletins and you'd like to have one, please slip up your hand real quick. We'll have the men run around here real quick and get you a bulletin. If you want to open them up, you do have several announcements for this coming week. First of all, I wanted to make sure that you knew that the Flyer Blitz is this Tuesday at 6:30. I forgot to change the slide inside of the bulletin. That is 6:30 on Tuesday. In years past, when we've only done one Flyer Blitz, we left at 5:30. But because we did two this year, we're going to do that at 6:30. So please make sure you note that. The Flyer Blitz will be at 6:30 on Tuesday. I got the slide fixed on the television, but not in the bulletin this morning. And then the Teen Formal Banquet this Friday for the 10th through 12th grade teens who purchase tickets. We need to meet here at 3:30. It says 4 o'clock, but we do need to meet here about 3:30. If you could make sure you're here for that, we are going to get together, take some pictures, and then get on the road quickly. And then next Sunday, June 4th, if you can believe we're talking about June, next Sunday, June 4th, after the AM service, we'll have dinner on the grounds, and then we'll have right after that, we'll have a VBS workers meeting. If you could bring a main dish and a side dish or a salad or dessert with that in order to share with everybody, we'll have a good time of fellowship with the dinner on the grounds. And then Vacation Bible School actually starts that Wednesday, the 7th, running Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. and then Sunday morning for Sunday school at 9:30 a.m. And then Miss Rachel is going to be looking for volunteers for running the carnival again this year. That has been very successful the past few years. We will do that carnival the 11th, Sunday morning, until 1 p.m., after the morning service until about 1 p.m. If you are interested in doing something for the carnival, please text or get a hold of Miss Rachel. If you do not have her number, you can get it from me later on today. Then, of course, Father's Day is June 19th. Today's activities, we will have choir practice at 5:15. I am sure much needed after all the weeks that we have had off. Choir practice will be at 5:15. Men's prayer time will be at 6 o'clock. And then our regular evening service at 6:30. I did want to make one other quick announcement. In the birthdays and anniversaries, I completely forgot to update and start putting June in, since we are going into June. So I did want to give you a couple. For June 3rd, for those of you who send cards and things like that, June 3rd is Gloriana Clark's birthday. June 4th is little Matthew Palmer's birthday, which is next Sunday. And then Rick and Vanessa Hoffer have an anniversary next Sunday. And then next Sunday I'll have the rest of the month of June filled in for you. If you do have your name missing from the birthdays and anniversaries and would like it in, you can fill out a family information card on the back table back there. We'll make sure we get it added into the system as soon as possible. This time our choir is going to sing Heal Our Land.
Humble themselves and pray. If they seek
It's rough not having Pastor here. It's a lot of running back and forth. I'm going to ask the men to come forward for this morning's offering. I hope you came prepared to give as the Lord has blessed you and given to you this week. Just a portion of what he's done for you. It's amazing all he does for us, and he just asks for a little portion back. It really amazes me to think of that. I'm going to ask Brother Ed if you'd lift your voice there and ask a word of blessing on the offering, sir.
Lord, I thank you for this day. I thank you for the beauty of this day. Thank you for the opportunity to be once again in your house. And Lord, help us get something out of the service. Be it the gifts that are given here, Lord, be used for all your glory and praise, Lord. And I just thank you for everyone that's here, Lord. I just thank you for their want to be here, Lord. And just help us to give you the glory for all this day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Before Brother Richie comes, we'll be singing 799. I did want to make one more announcement. For those of you who may not have heard, Miss Carolyn Hederman, her father passed away this past week, and she was there at the funeral yesterday, and they will have a full military service tomorrow, I believe. So if you could just be praying for the Hederman family and the loss of Miss Carolyn's father, we would greatly appreciate that. Brother Richie?
As you stand one last time, turn to 799. We're going to sing America the Beautiful, 799. 799 on the first. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee. All right, as you make your way back to your seat, join me on the third verse of 799, so the piano player's hands don't fall off. Join me on the third. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country love, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
You go ahead and be seated there. I'm going to be in Mark chapter 14 in just a moment after these fine young people sing for us. I just want to say hello real quick to a few of our visitors who are here this morning. Miss Teresa's back here. in this corner. Thank you for coming and being here with us today. And then we have Flora and Marilyn right down there in the middle. Thank you guys so much for being here. And we hope you enjoy the services here this morning. It truly is life, making choices, including the choice whether or not you want to be a Christian. There are a lot of believers, a lot of people who are saved out there. There really aren't a lot who choose to live like a Christian would live. A great song of that song. Mark chapter 14. I notice if Pastor's watching, it's yet another themed sermon that he's skipping out on. He does this to me all the time. Locked into a theme. Memorial Day is a federal holiday in the United States for remembering the people who died while serving in the country's armed forces. The holiday which is currently observed... Stay here for a minute. The holiday which is currently observed every year on the last Monday of May originated as Decoration Day after the American Civil War in 1868, when the Grand Army of the Republic, an organization of Union veterans founded in Decatur, Illinois, established it as a time for the nation to decorate the graves of the Union war dead with flowers. By the 20th century, competing Union and Confederate holiday traditions celebrated on different days had merged, and Memorial Day eventually extended to honor all Americans who died while in military service. Many people visit cemeteries and memorials, particularly to honor those who have died in military service. Many volunteers place an American flag on each grave in national cemeteries. In researching Memorial Day, I found a great speech written by one of my favorite orators, President Ronald Reagan. I clipped some of it out, and I'm going to ask Brother Keith and Brother Derek back there to play that audio clip for us, which comes courtesy of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. It's a few minutes long, so I ask you, please give it your utmost attention. It is a powerful speech. Go ahead, guys.
In America's cities and towns today, flags will be placed on graves and cemeteries. Public officials will speak of the sacrifice and the valor of those whose memory we honor. In 1863, when he dedicated a small cemetery in Pennsylvania marking a terrible collision between the armies of North and South, Abraham Lincoln noted the swift obscurity of such speeches. Well, we know now that Lincoln was wrong about that particular occasion. His remarks commemorating those who gave their last full measure of devotion were long remembered. But since that moment at Gettysburg, few other such addresses have become part of our national heritage. Not because of the inadequacy of the speakers, but because of the inadequacy of words. I have no illusions about what little I can add now to the silent testimony of those who gave their lives willingly for their country. Words are even more feeble on this Memorial Day, for the sight before us is that of a strong and good nation that stands in silence and remembers those who were loved and who in return loved their countrymen enough to die for them. Yet we must try to honor them, not for their sakes alone, but for our own. And if words cannot repay the debt we owe these men, surely with our actions, we must strive to keep faith with them and with a vision that led them to battle and a final sacrifice. Our first obligation to them and ourselves is plain enough. The United States and the freedom for which it stands, the freedom for which they died, must endure and prosper. Their lives remind us that freedom is not bought cheaply. It has a cost. It imposes a burden. And just as they, when we commemorate, were willing to sacrifice, so too must we, in a less final, less heroic way, be willing to give of ourselves. It is this, beyond the controversy and the congressional debate, beyond the blizzard of budget numbers and the complexity of modern weapons systems, that motivates us in our search for security and peace. It's not just strength or courage that we need, but understanding and a measure of wisdom as well. We must understand enough about our world to see the value of our alliances. We must be wise enough about ourselves to listen to our allies, to work with them, to build and strengthen the bonds between us. The willingness of some to give their lives so that others might live never fails to evoke in us a sense of wonder and mystery. They span several generations of young Americans, all different and yet all alike, like the markers above their resting places, all alike in a truly meaningful way. Each died for a cause he considered more important than his own life. Well, they didn't volunteer to die. They volunteered to defend values for which men have always been willing to die if need be. The values which make up what we call civilization. And how they must have wished, in all the ugliness that war brings, that no other generation of young men to follow would have to undergo that same experience. As we honor their memory today, let us pledge that their lives, their sacrifices, their valor shall be justified and remembered for as long as God gives life to this nation. And let us also pledge to do our utmost to carry out what must have been their wish, that no other generation of young men will ever have to share their experiences and repeat their sacrifice. Earlier today, with the music that we have heard and that of our national anthem, I can't claim to know the words of all the national anthems in the world, but I don't know of any other that ends with a question and a challenge as ours does. Does that flag still wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Very good.
I'll come back to that speech a little bit later on in the sermon. But for right now, let's read Mark chapter 14. We'll start in verse 3 there. It says, "And being in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at meat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment of spikenard, very precious. She brake the box and poured it on his head. And there were some that had indignation within themselves and said, Why was this waste of the ointment made? For it might have been sold for more than 300 pence and have been given to the poor. And they murmured against her. And Jesus said, Let her alone. Why trouble ye her? She hath wrought a good work on me. For ye have the poor with you always, and whensoever you will, you may do them good. But me ye have not always. She hath done what she could. She is come aforehand to anoint my body to the burying. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her." A memorial is something designed to preserve a memory of a person or a thing. Out of verse 9 there, that word memorial in the Greek means a reminder or a record. As I think about life and I think about memorials, I think of many markers that you could call a reminder or a memorial in your life. The first marker that I thought of when I was considering this was birthdays. There are some specific markers or specific birthdays that we look back as life-changing times. I think of the birthday when you turn 13. What a marker that is. You become a teenager. You officially know everything. Yes, I have one, thank you. I think of 16. 16 years old is a pretty big marker, a pretty big memorial in our life. It's the time where we get our driver's license, or we can. Some of us waited a little bit longer, but you can get your driver's license. You can officially get a job and work a job, though it's limited on the hours that you can work. And then I think of 18. 18's a big one. You're no longer a minor. Now you can work 18 hours a day, and it's no big deal. All of a sudden, I don't know how big of a difference 16 to 18 makes, but you go from an 8-hour day maximum with breaks every 2 hours and all that good stuff to good luck with life. Then there's 21. When you hit 21 years old, this is all of a sudden you're an adult. And I don't know why we have to associate those things with ages, but for whatever reason in our society we do, and 21 says that you're an adult. Although I've known a lot people older than 21 who still do not act like adults. And then there's major birthdays, the decade birthdays, the markers of 30 and 40 and 50 and so on. Each one a specific milestone in our lives, a memorial, so to speak. I think not only of birthdays, but then I think of milestones or major events that happen in our lives. I think of my marriage, when I got married to my wife. I have a memorial to that. Things in my mind cause me to remember. It's been recorded in my head strongly. I think of things like convention. These students were just at convention. And I think of all the weeks that I spent at convention through the years, and they are strong memorials in my mind. There are things that happen at conventions that I will never forget. And I hope that each of our students goes into convention who goes, trying to seek something that they will never forget. I think of maybe the most important event, actually not maybe, I think of the most important milestone that you could possibly have is your salvation. When something as big and awesome as God moving into your life happens, it should create a memory in your mind that's a memorial that lasts a lifetime. Not only birthdays and events, but places. There are places that become memorials. I think of where my wife and I went for our honeymoon. Every time I think about that place, the memories come flooding, and it's a record and a reminder. I think about gravesides and standing and remembering the times that we buried friends and loved ones in our lives. I think of vacation places. We go to Ocean City. We were talking about Myrtle Beach with some of our visitors here this morning. My family vacation is to Ocean City, Maryland. And just as soon as you step out of the car, the smell, the crossing of the drawbridge on Route 50 as you're getting ready to go into Ocean City, pulling into the hotel and just enjoying the view of the ocean and the inlet. What a great time. They're memories, they're memorials, things that stick out in your mind. The most important one for me that I wanted to kind of focus and hone in on today is like this lady in our story, people. People who create an impact in your life. That when you see that person, or when you think about that person, strong emotions and feelings come flooding back, and they are a reminder or a record of certain events that have happened, or certain things in your life. They are memorials. People can be a memorial. These memorials that we have in our lives, they cause some things to happen. They cause us to remember the past. They stir in us memories, and they cause us to remember the past. They cause us to reflect on the present, to think about where we're at in comparison, maybe how those things shaped our lives and where we're at in our life today. And they cause us to respond for the future. They cause us maybe to plan and think about things. This year, a week from tomorrow, I hit one of those major milestone birthdays. My hair is starting to reflect that major milestone birthday. And I'll be honest with you, as I'm approaching that day, in many instances, my mind goes back to things that have happened in the past. It reflects on where I'm at in the present. And it causes me to respond and plan to do things in the future. No, it is not a midlife crisis. If I ever drive up into the parking lot in a Camaro or on a motorcycle, it's not a midlife crisis. It would be multiple ones that I've owned, and it's just finally that I can afford another one. Not a midlife crisis at all. If I bought one now, it would be a midlife crisis, because financially, not going to happen. As I read the story of this woman in Mark chapter 14, I can't imagine the memorial that she left, the impact that she left as a person in the lives of those disciples, and even on Christ himself, as he's the one that says that it's going to be a memorial to her. It's that kind of memorial that I want to focus on this morning. Being someone with a positive impact on those around me. So I must ask myself, what kind of memorial will I be in someone else's life? Listen, we all have influence on those who are around us. We all have influence on people that we come into contact with. The question is, what kind of memorial will you be for them? This woman in our story has some very distinct characteristics that we're going to talk about this morning that I believe made her this person who left a positive memorial on others. When I look at this woman and when I read this story, I see, first of all, that this woman was selfless. First of all, she was selfless. She had nothing really to gain in what she did here. The entire act was about Jesus Christ and Christ himself, not about anything else. John the Baptist stated it well when he said, "He must increase, but I must decrease." But it's not just Jesus Christ himself that we're to be selfless with. The Bible teaches us that love puts others before us. Love is selfless. If you need to look no further than Jesus telling the story of the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan had nothing to gain by helping the man on the side of the road. Yet he was selfless and did everything that he could to help him. Every young student knows of Sir Isaac Newton and his famed encounter with a falling apple. Newton discovered and introduced the laws of gravity back in the 1600s, which revolutionized astronomical studies. But few know that if it weren't for Edmund Halley, the world might never have learned from Newton. It was Halley who challenged Newton to think through his original notions. He corrected Newton's mathematical errors. He prepared geometrical figures to support his discoveries. He coaxed Newton into writing the great work, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. He even edited, supervised, and financed the printing of the publication, just to make sure it got out. Historians call it one of the most selfless examples in the annals of science. Newton began almost immediately to reap the rewards of prominence. Halley received little credit. He did use the principles, though, to predict the path of a certain comet that gets discussed about once every 76 years. But it was not only until after his death that he received any acclaim for that. Halley remained a devoted scientist who didn't care who received the credit as long as the cause was being advanced. To be a true positive memorial in someone's life, I must be willing to be selfless. I must be willing to advance the cause without gain. I should be concerned about helping them. I should be concerned about seeing them get rewarded and helping others succeed. We get so wrapped up in our own motives. We become selfish, self-indulging, self-centered, self-involved people who just cannot be a positive memorial in someone else's life. Here's a good litmus test for you. I am a man, just like many of you out there who aren't women. But tell me this. Men, how often are you willing to give up the television remote control? Now, it might sound like a silly example, but think about it. It really is the ultimate test of selflessness for a man. Are you willing to give up the remote control to your wife? Now, understand, if she's a good wife, she's still going to flip to the game. That's a sermon for another time. We'll discuss that another day. But are you willing to give up the remote control? It may sound silly, but we get things in our lives that we just like to have control over, that we want to possess, that we want to be in charge of. You have got to be willing to give up control to someone else. Think of all the things in your life that you like to have control over. Are you really willing to be selfless in those areas? This woman didn't have much. As a matter of fact, it says that she did what she could. It was all she had. It's all she could do. But she was willing to give up that control to do what the Lord wanted her to do. She was willing to give up all she had. Are you willing to do the same? Not only do I see that this woman was selfless, but I see this woman was sacrificing. It says that the value of the box was very precious, and the disciples said it could have been sold for more than 300 pence. Does anybody have an idea? This is where you feedback. Anybody have an idea how much 300 pence would be worth in today's day and age, in today's economy? Somebody have a clue? Anybody, without having to look it up? $3,000? $51? Anybody else have a guess? No guesses? Okay, so I did the math. And for anybody who knows me, that's my favorite subject. And I work hard in math. And I use all kinds of calculations. And here's what I came up with. The value of 300 pence in Bible times, if you were to take it and use it in today's time, today's economy is worth $42,000. $42,000. That is quite a sacrifice. Listen, if anybody's willing to sacrifice $42,000, I'm right here. I am willing to let you sacrifice that for me. I'm okay with that. $42,000 this woman sacrificed. That is quite the financial burden, I am sure. With the celebrations involved around Memorial Day this time of the year, there should be a deep commemoration of what these fallen men and women have sacrificed for us in order to live in the free country that we do. More than 1.1 million men and women have given the ultimate sacrifice of their lives so that we could live in the greatest land on earth. More valuable than any of our finances or property is our life. Greater love hath no man than this, than a man lay down his life for his friend. Can I tell you this morning that Jesus was the ultimate example of sacrificial love? The one who is perfect came to earth thinking only of our future and our benefit, sacrificed his sinless life so that I could gain eternity in heaven. Can you believe that somebody would love you so much that he was willing to selflessly sacrifice his life just for you? If you do not already know him and trust him to take you to heaven, I encourage you at the end of the service to come and talk to me so I can introduce you to the one who loved you with a perfect love, a love that was sacrificial and selfless. It's a sad day, and I don't want to take anything away from those who served in the military and those who gave their lives, but it is a sad day when we will do more to honor the lives who sacrificed for us to live in America than we would to the one who sacrificed for us to live in heaven for eternity. It should be a challenge to us, as President Reagan said in his speech, it should be a challenge for us to see those sacrifices and want to do something in return. For our fallen soldiers, we honor them through helping their families, through telling others about what they have done for us, and through carrying on the causes that they fight for so bravely. Shouldn't it be the same thing for Christ? That's what we're left here on earth for. We're left here to help the family of Christ who has been left behind by his going. We're here to tell others about what he has done and the battle that he has already won. And we are here to carry on his work in the ministry. That is how we honor him for his selfless sacrifice. I read the quote, "Ministry that costs nothing accomplishes nothing." There is a cost that's going to be involved if you want to honor Christ this way. There will be a sacrifice in ministry. I think of Sunday school teachers sacrificing time and energies. I think of those in the nursery workers sacrificing their lives to deal with some of those children. I put 4 through there, I know. I think of the financial burden that they take upon themselves in order to buy the snacks. They purchase those themselves as nursery workers. I think of the children's ministries in our church. Those workers sacrifice financially for gifts, for experiments, for object lessons, for snack time, for quiet seat prizes. They sacrifice for their ministries. If you want to honor Christ, it's probably going to require sacrifice, just like this woman. Not only do I see that she was selfless and sacrificing, but third, as we continue to look at this memorable woman, I see that she was surrendered. When I look at verse 8, I see that she has done what she could. She has come aforehand to anoint my body for the burying. She was surrendered. She was humbly submitted to do whatever was needed to accomplish her purpose. You know, God had something for her to do, and whether it was big or small, whether it was public or private, she was surrendered to do whatever it took to accomplish it. God has a specific purpose for each and every one of our lives. He has something he wants you to do. Are you really fully surrendered to him? I know that we like to say that we're surrendered, but what if God called you to full-time ministry? What if God called you to be a missionary to Africa? What if God called your child? Are you surrendered? Are you truly surrendered to do whatever he would ask? To be honest with you, this step must take place before you're selfless and sacrificing. The surrender is the willingness to give up control. The surrender is the desire to see someone else have control. The surrender is the heart to allow them to use you however they need, regardless of what the cost will be. That is true surrender. Many Christians confess that they would do whatever God asked, but few actually seek what he wants for them. Are you really willing to do whatever God asks for you? There's a story that I read about the captain of a ship who was looking through the dark night and saw faint lights in the distance. So immediately he told his signalman, "Send a message. Alter your course 10 degrees south." The signalman sent the message and shortly thereafter received a message back, "Alter your course 10 degrees north." The captain was angered and upset. So he sent another message and said, "Alter your course 10 degrees south. I am a captain." Soon a second message was received that said, "Alter your course 10 degrees north. I am a seaman 3rd class," which I'm guessing is way below captain if I were to guess right, for those who are in the Navy. The captain was enraged, and he knew what he was in, so he sent the message, alter your course 10 degrees south, I am a battleship. Then the reply came, alter your course 10 degrees north, I am a lighthouse. It's a silly story, but can I ask you today, do you really have a desire to do what God wants? Or are you busy trying to captain your own life? Are you busy trying to pick your own directions and do your own thing? Or are you willing to listen when he tries to change your course? It's not just the desire to do what he wants that we need to be surrendered to, but it's the desire maybe to give some things up. The Bible says that we're to lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us. There are things in life that God is going to ask you maybe to give up, and they might not be sins. They could be a weight. Are you really surrendered to give up the things that he wants you to give up? I think back through my life, one of the hardest things I had to give up was some of my relationships with people. I can go back and I can think of some of the best friends I've ever had, and I had to give up those relationships because I know that to be surrendered to God, I had to give those up. Are you really willing to let go of those relationships? Are you surrendered wholly and completely to lay aside the weights and the sin which does so easily beset us? Are you really surrendered? One last thing I want you to see about this great woman who became such a positive memorial. I see that she was stable even though she was scrutinized. In verse 5, it says, the disciples speaking say, for it might have been sold for more than 300 pence and have been given to the poor, and they murmured against her. Just as a side note, this is the second time Jesus was anointed with expensive oil. In the first time that Jesus was anointed with expensive oil, Judas was the only one that spoke out and murmured against the woman who anointed him. But you see how a critical spirit will spread amongst people. In this passage, just a few days later, it's all of the disciples speaking out and murmuring against her and scrutinizing her. She remains stable regardless of what they said. There's a story of two battleships who met in the night, began to attack each other. During the course of the conflict, a number of crewmen were wounded and the vessels were both severely damaged. As daylight broke, the remaining sailors on the ship discovered to their amazement that both vessels flew the English flag. We have to remember that we are not each other's enemies. Your enemy is not your friend. It's not family members. It's not a church member. It's not even your pastor. It's Satan. He is your enemy. This woman kept moving despite the attacks, even of friendly fire. I read the quote, people who fight fire with fire usually end up with ashes. This woman remained stable even through the accusations and let Christ fight her battle for her. How often would things be better in life if we were to not succumb to the scrutiny of others? There are times where I do believe we need to stand for our faith, but I believe far more often we should be stable and let Christ fight the good fight for us. Every opportunity that we face, just like this woman, will come with opposition. There's always going to be critics when you're trying to advance the cause of Christ. Paul said that there was a great door and effectual opened unto him, and there were many adversaries. And I want to be like this woman. I want to have a positive memorial. And sometimes that means just let people criticize and keep advancing the cause of Christ. I do want to draw your attention to just a few more things rather quickly before I close. Sometimes memorials don't always mark good, positive things. As a matter of fact, I want you to read back here at verse 9. If you're still there in Mark 14, it says, verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her. Verse 10, and Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went unto the chief priests to betray him unto them. And when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. And he sought how he might conveniently betray him. What struck me actually with this sermon and what got the fire burning inside of me was the fact that these two memorials are back to back. We see this memorial of this wonderful woman who was so selfless and sacrificing, surrendered to do whatever God wanted her to do, stable in the midst of all the scrutiny. And then immediately following, you see Judas, selfish, seeking his own gain, being secretive and sneaky behind people's backs. That is certainly not a positive memorial, but a negative one. As I look back through my life, I can think of many people who have had influence, people who I would call memorials. And sad to say, I can think of negatives as much as I can think of positives. Like Judas, there will be many we come across that are self-serving individuals, seeking their own advancement rather than that of others or even Christ. I challenge you this morning, don't be a negative memorial in someone else's life. I took the liberty, and again, no disrespect to Mr. Reagan, but I took the liberty to rewrite a little portion of that speech that he gave, and hopefully you'll recognize parts of it as I go through with it. But I tried to make it a little more applicable to the sermon, just rewording a few things here and there. In America's cities and towns today, worship will take place in churches. Pastors will speak of the sacrifice and the one whose memory we honor. I have no illusions about what little I can add now to the silent testimony of the one who gave his life willingly for mine. Yet we must try to honor him. And if words cannot repay the debt we owe him, surely with our actions we must strive to show the faith we have in him who went to his final sacrifice. His life reminds us that freedom is not bought cheaply. It has a cost. And just as him who we commemorate was willing to sacrifice, so too must we, in a less final, less heroic way, be willing to give of ourselves. It is not just strength or courage that we need, but understanding and a measure of wisdom as well. We must understand enough about our world to see the value of our alliances. We must be wise enough about ourselves to listen to our allies, to work with them, to build and strengthen bonds between us. It is altogether fitting we have this moment to reflect on the price of freedom and the one who willingly paid for it. The willingness of Christ to give his life so that others might live should never fail to evoke in us a sense of wonder and mystery. As we honor his memory today, let us pledge that his life, his sacrifice, his valor shall be remembered for as long as God gives life to this mortal body. And let us also pledge to do our utmost to carry out what must have been his wish, that everyone hears the good news of what he did and the freedom that he offers. This morning, I guess the ultimate question is, what kind of influence or memorial do you want to be? Do you want to be one who shows Christ through selfless, sacrificial, surrendered giving of yourself to others? You want to be one like Judas, who goes through life selfishly, seeking his own gain. A friend of mine once said that he believed God uprooted him from his home, moved him out of his state, because God knew the negative influence that his friends would be on him, because of the bad memorial that they would be. And I would hate to think that God would have to move somebody away from Latrobe, Pennsylvania, because of the bad memorial that I was going to be on them. One last illustration of a memorial, and I'm through this morning. I was thinking through memorials, and I thought about class reunions. And I was thinking about how strong of a memorial those really are. You meet up with so many friends and acquaintances from your past, and you sit down and you remember, and you reflect, maybe even respond. If we were to call this day today Memorial Day 2017, and you were to mark this day in your life as a Memorial Day, if you were to go 20 years from now as a class reunion and look back over those 20 years, where do you think the ones will be that you had an influence on? In 20 years, what would you say your memorial will be? Let's all stand with our heads bowed and eyes closed this morning. It's a very simple invitation. First of all, let me ask, do you know the one who made the ultimate sacrifice for you? The one who died so that you could spend eternity in heaven? If not, I urge you as the piano begins to play that you would meet me up front here so I can have somebody introduce you to the greatest hero that ever died. If you do know him, can I ask you what type of influence you have on others right now? What kind of memorial do you think you're going to be in 20 years? As the piano begins to play, I can't help but think on this Memorial Day that most of us could learn to be more selfless, more sacrificial, more surrendered, and more stable in order to be a positive memorial on others. The invitation is open. If you need to talk to somebody, if you need to talk to the Lord, please come forward. Use the altar as you see fit this morning. Practice at 5:15. Men's prayer time at 6 o'clock, and then the evening service at 6:30 tonight. Tonight we have a missionary with us. For those of you who don't know, Brother Stan Templeton will be here with us this evening. He'll be just giving an update on his ministry and preaching during this evening service. So I hope you'll get a chance to come and hear one of our missionaries speak this evening, Brother Stan Templeton. Brother Richie, please come and close us out with a word of prayer.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the great message that Pastor Lear preached, Lord. I just ask that as we go throughout this week, Lord, we really think about the memorial we're leaving behind, the legacy we're leaving behind, Lord. Are we making a positive difference, Lord? And Lord, I just ask that you give us a good rest of the day and bring us back together safely this evening for the 6:30 service. In your precious name.